an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Episode 33, The Northern Wall of Briggs. In this episode, we get to see a little bit of Kimblee being a little bit too competent. Don't like it. However, that sort of ends when he winds up having to face Scar in battle because it turns out he is out of practice. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. What's up, Max? So this one was like one of those episodes that when it ends, it felt like it had just gotten rolling. And I don't mean in terms of like, oh, it was so slow the whole time. I just mean I got very invested and it felt like it went by really, really fast. And then all of a sudden the credits had started rolling and I was like, wait, what? Occasionally that will happen with this show where I am just startled that it's already over. And then there are episodes where I am like, I cannot believe how much they packed in. That was one episode. Holy shit. It sort of kind of like can go back and forth, you know, but, so this one starts off with, our, you know, friends still trying to track Scar, figuring out where he had gotten off of the train. And there is a series of like small signs that Kimblee is following with strong suspicions about some of what might be going on here. And again, I say that he is too competent and it makes me anxious. So they find this spot in the mountains where it's going, the train is like, you know, veering around the mountainsides. And this is the place that he had pinpointed on the map as a spot where the train would have to slow down. And it would make it a lot easier for them to jump off the train here because the like lower speeds, they're not going to risk life and limb. Probably they are risking life and limb, let's be honest. But, Kimblee says something about how it's odd that nobody noticed him because up till this point, Scar has been deliberately conspicuous. And I thought it was sort of surprising that Kimblee says he's been deliberately conspicuous, but doesn't seem to think about what that could mean. Because I had mentioned last episode that every time we saw Scar, he was only with one person. And obviously there were supposed to be 4 in his party. So I was kind of like, what's going on? And it doesn't seem to enter Kimblee's mind that maybe Scar is purposely pulling them in the wrong direction. But it felt like when he says deliberately conspicuous that he is like not even a step away from reaching that conclusion. It felt almost like he had reached it already. And then it doesn't really come up and he seems genuinely surprised when later on Dr. Marcoh isn't with them after all. And I was like, but dude, you said the thing yourself. How did you like not put together that was what was going on there? So there is a boat that was stolen 200 meters south of here, as this guy says, which do y'all know about meters? Just out of curiosity. If somebody told you it's about 200 meters away, what would that mean to you? I genuinely have no idea. 50 yards is half a football field, right? And a yard is almost a meter. They're almost the same. So if we're going to do that, that means about 2 football fields distance? Is that right? So it's like long enough away that you wouldn't spot it from the tracks, but it's close enough that it would be immediately like covered by any sort of search done by professionals, I guess. I am making that up. I'm using the best context clues I have about football fields. That's really the only way that I know how to measure any like multiples of yards. So yeah, they look into this, but nobody had actually witnessed it being stolen. So they're not positive about that. And then this other guy says, we've talked to an old man who lives nearby that claims to have seen a suspicious pair of men who were heading west. And that guy who in the subtitles, by the way, is labeled Officer B, which I found kind of like funny. He says, take a search party to investigate. Meanwhile, Kimblee is still staring at this map, and he's just like, there's a road here that looked like it's going north, but what is that? And he says it's a logging road that had a lot of rock slide problems, so they wound up closing it down for safety reasons. And that's what Kimblee zeroes in on and is like, okay, because rightfully, he assumes that if this guy is an alchemist, he is going to be able to make plenty of room for himself, despite the rock slides. Even if there was a rock slide while they were traveling, he would be able to probably like stop it in place or do something to protect them. So it wouldn't really be a problem. And they come upon a pile of rocks that almost looks like it hasn't been... There's a look initially of like it's been here a while. But he looks down and there's a stream in the ground. A spot where it had been like a indentation. And it's not like a stream, like a real creek or anything. But it's like, you know, a little bit of drainage that would be happening if a lot of rainwater got caught up in this like rock formation. And it had been draining to this one spot. And now it is not. And he kneels down and he picks up a rock and he gets this smile on his face. And I'll be honest, y'all, I had no idea what the significance of this was at all. He says for an alchemist skilled in destruction, clearing even this big an obstacle would be a simple task. And he turns around and holds out the rock. It would be equally easy for him to destroy the face of a mountain to once again block this road with a rock slide. And he holds the rock out, and this guy says, transmutation marks, and we get to see it. Have we ever seen transmutation marks like close up like this before? Because what it is a like grid of sort of long, narrow rectangles that are raised up out of the stone that really reminds me of when they're in the portal getting like deconstructed by all of those like hands that grab them. The look of their bodies coming apart is like the same pattern, which I don't think I had ever quite just made the flat out association with the way their bodies disappeared or got fucked up was transmutation. I think I was just like, transmutation is the means by which they got through the portal. And then once they're through the portal, there's no more transmutation. Now it is just straight up magic. And like, I don't know why that was like the way that I was thinking about it, but I'll be honest, like it really was. So seeing this transmutation mark stone being the same kind of pattern, I suddenly felt like such an idiot. I was like, oh my God, it's the same thing. I felt dense as fuck. But yeah, so Kimblee is like, yep, north. That is where we're going. So then we go to Ed and Al. They are getting off of a train, running outside, very excited because they have reached the north, TM, and it is snowing, and they are super excited about it. Now, I will say this. guys. Snow, I really like snow. Being cold sucks balls. Don't love that. Snow's aesthetic is like close to unbeatable when it's fresh. Snow that's like a couple days old, especially if it's gotten warmer since it fell, the worst. Worst aesthetic almost of any. It's a weird thing how quick it can go from like absolutely stunningly beautiful to so depressingly bleak. But it really doesn't take that long. So I love snow, and I live somewhere where we don't get it very often. When we get it, we have an entire state shut down for nearly a week, but that's a whole other story. So I understand their excitement about seeing snow. But I have to say, man, the camera pans over the city that they are in. And this place is fucking bleak. It is it is so Soviet is kind of the vibe here. I know that it's like meant to be sort of Russia-esque. I think they even call it drachma. Isn't that the name of the country? Which is like, drachma is the name of a currency somewhere. Is that a Russian currency? That's rubles, right? Where's drachma? Is that Greece? That feels familiar for some reason, but I might be wrong on that. But this place could just not look less welcoming. If you want to make a place look warm and inviting despite the fact that it is cold, there's a way that you would draw that. And that's clearly not what our animators are going for here, because shit is just, it's very like open and gray. All of the buildings feel sort of like abandoned. They're not actually abandoned, but there's no lights on. There's no like indications of warmth coming from anywhere. And that's the key. Like if you go to Zillow, for example, and you really stop and take notice of the few images of homes that really make you stop and go, ooh, a lot of times those are photos taken at dusk or sometimes just straight up like evening where it's dark, and they have just done really nice lighting so that the home looks like it's almost glowing. It doesn't have to be light outside for a place to look light and inviting. It's helpful to have the contrast, if anything. So if we wanted to draw this place as like, we're going to have it look like this is a cold environment, but there's also a coziness to it. You would have some of these windows pouring like, warm yellow light down onto the street, making little squares on the snow. There would be a vibe. There's not even street lights or anything. There are street lamps. There are like poles with lanterns on them. There's no light coming out of them. And one could say that's just because it's day, but I feel like that's a conscious choice. I'm just saying. Oh, Erica says Greece. You're reading Percy Jackson and they use drachma. That is what it is. That is what it is. Thank you, Erica. I finished Percy Jackson, so now I'm reading Stormlight Archive. But yeah, drachma comes up all the time. But yeah, that's a weird choice then, because this place feels very Russian. So then to call it after Greek currency, I mean, it's an odd choice. That's all I'm saying. So this place just feels really, all of the buildings are white and gray and really, really pale yellow. And there's just a foreboding sort of sense. There's people here and there, but there's not like anything like crowds. We've got a statue of this guy in the middle of the square that is covered in snow, and the dude looks like probably he was kind of a dick. And as they're coming outside, Ed and Al are both, Ed winds up slipping and falling down the steps because of the ice, which truly is something that you have to get used to if you don't like spend a lot of time in cold weather. Man, I can't believe you guys. I've lived here in Texas now for like 7 years, and the freezes that we've had here when we've had them, where there's been real ice, it's remarkable how completely I have forgotten how to handle myself on ice. I used to be able to deal with this shit, and I have completely lost it. It's just like gone. And there's this cute moment where Ed and Al talk about the snowball fight that they had when they were little, and they use alchemy to like make a snowman, and the snowman has skull buttons going down the front and looks really like mean. He looks mad, and I kind of enjoyed that. It's not my aesthetic for a snowman, clearly, but that definitely does feel like the kind of snowman that like 7-year-old boys would make. You know what I mean? I felt like that was right. And we get a slow pan over the outskirts of this town. It is big. This is like a really big town. I keep saying city, and it is a city. But because it doesn't have like any skyscrapers or anything, it feels like the wrong word. You know what I'm saying? So we get some really beautiful snow animation, though, like mixed in here, I have to say. And again, I just love the aesthetic of snow a lot of the time, even when it's like meant to be bleak. It's fun to watch that be animated. So I'm kind of excited about the fact that the next maybe like few episodes, maybe the next like 20, I don't know, are going to be taking place in this sort of setting. So they're talking about what they're going to do because they're on basically like a crossover where they're going to be getting onto another train. And in the meantime, they're talking about what they're going to do. Al is like, well, maybe you should get something to eat. And then we cut back to Kimblee, who is sitting there. This dude is just sitting next to this cork board and having people report to him and sort of like looking like he's sitting on a throne. There's a real energy to him here of like holding court in a way. And I've got to assume that this is just kind of the energy that he carries all the time, which frankly, I would love to be able to also do that. If there's like a trick to it, I would like to learn how to internalize looking like I'm sitting on a throne no matter what seat I'm sitting in. I think the key is like sitting up straight, right? So I'm going to try it right now. Okay, so I'm in my chair. I got to sit up straight. I got these long ass sleeves in my way. Hold on. Because I have this like kimono robe on. All right. Got to kind of like chest forward, back, and you want to sort of like, right? Like look down your nose, like just the slightest bit, but not like in a snotty way, just sort of a like, well, you're just naturally below me kind of way, right? It feels wrong. I feel like I would expect myself to be able to pull off a throne sort of look, and I'm having trouble. I need a crown. I have some over there. We'll do that later. I'll do my throne seating with my crown on later. I will too. But anyway, I just really enjoy. I think a part of it is also the fact that he's still wearing that fucking like white 3-piece suit, and that has just such impact. You know, I mean, maybe I need to change my outfit. This robe isn't bad. I will give the robe some credit here. It's doing something. But yeah, I need to, plus in this like camera angle, you guys can really only see from like tits up. And I think a lot of the like queenliness would come from like my core. So if you can't see my core, you're not going to like get the full effect anyway. So, all right, I tried. So yeah, they're talking about like where he has been spotted. One stop ahead, witnesses saw him getting aboard a military train bound for Briggs station. And they saw a middle-aged man with black hair, just like the report says, which is true. However, it turns out that it is not who we thought. And this dude is like, he tries, one of the guys that's working for him is like, are we going to alert the train? And he's like, no, because Scar will like find out somehow. I don't know how, but Kimblee seems to really trust in Scar's like abilities as well. And essentially takes it for granted that if they put information out there on the airwaves, it will somehow get back to him, which, that is probably a safe bet. I don't really know how either, but I'll just take it for granted Scar will figure it out. So we cut to Scar and somebody, asterisk, on the train with him. We don't see who it is. And they are wearing a hood and sort of shivering. And he says something like, you'd better sleep while you can, because once we hit the cold, like the real cold, you are not going to be able to sleep. And all of a sudden, there's this moment. They're riding, the train is going, his eyes are like closing, like he's going to try and catch 40 winks as well. And then suddenly his eyes open and he looks over and it seems like he knows. And he goes and like pulls open the door of the train and looks out onto the platform to see if there's anything going on. And he's just got a feeling. And I was like, how are you aware? And then the next time that he goes and runs back and opens it, there's another train right next to theirs pulling up on them. So he could I don't know if he could hear the other train or if it's meant to be that he has got like a sixth sense about when shit's kind of going wrong. I wasn't entirely clear. I feel like it might be that he heard it. But then Kimblee is out here saying, I'm going to jump from this train to that one, so make sure you got their speeds completely the same. And Kimblee, you guys, I really need to underline the fact that Kimblee jumps off that train wearing his white fedora, holding it down onto his head, because it is more important for him to make this impression than to just have his hands free. Sir, leave your fedora. For Christ's sake, sir. And he opens one of the train cars because he just saw Scar in it. And there is a dude all by himself in there. And he comes stumbling upon him. Where's your friend Scar? It's time to give up. And he spins the dude around and his hood falls back. And it's poor, what's his name? Yoshi. It's not Yoshi, but I always think Yoshi every time. And y'all, he has snot frozen in one of his nostrils. Have you ever had snot freeze? Because I'll tell you what. The worst. The worst. I remember one time I was waiting for the bus to pick me up and it was freezing. And the bus was a good 3-block walk from where I lived, city block walk. It was a walk. And I didn't know, and neither did my babysitter who had dropped me off at I think actually maybe she dropped me off, but I think I walked that day. I don't know, whatever. But she hadn't known that school was canceled. And I stood there for at least half an hour in the cold waiting for the bus. And I started crying because I thought if I went home, I was going to get in trouble. But I couldn't stand the cold anymore. And I just started crying. And all of the tears froze on the front of my jacket and began to freeze on my face. And I remember noticing that it was happening and just being what the fuck? But yeah, it turned out that school was canceled. So I think that I was thinking about finally walking back. And I think that's when my babysitter pulled up because she went home, found out it had been canceled and was like, shit, and like went out and picked me up. So I was just about to sort of turn around and just be like, I guess I'm going to get in trouble. I don't know. And she rolled up and was like, all right, get in the car. But yeah, I really felt for him in this because they like really are sort of zeroing in on the fact that our guys might not be out in the like elements directly. They're on a train car, but this place isn't fucking insulated. It's not meant for passengers. This is a like storage, you know? This is where we're meant to have cargo. So then we have Scar stepping out and doing his little showdown with Kimblee, and they both realize who they each are. The murderous Isvalan that I've heard so much about. So good to see you. And it's interesting because both of them have a moment of recognition. I was surprised because I expected that look to come from Scar because we know what Kimblee did to his brother. But we get a look like that from Kimblee. And I think he mentions like later on down the line that Scar looks a lot like his brother. So maybe that's why he got that look on his face. But it was weird because I felt like he already knew who Scar was, but the timing of the light that comes in through the open doorway of this compartment and his expression changing felt very much like it was supposed to be Kimblee like sees him clearly for the first time and suddenly feels something different. And of course, like I said, when Scar gets a good look at him, he absolutely recognizes this guy as the one who ripped his town apart and killed his brother. And it is a wild moment, y'all, because he is having a flashback to this memory. We're close up on his like red eye. And then when we go back to Kimblee's eye, it's like a sphere with like 3 circles and then a dot in the middle, which I think is meant to be just an indicator that this guy is off his fucking rocker. But there is something about it that is like, it looks like a target, but not in a way that makes him look like a target. It looks like the scope, like the sight on a rifle or something. Do you know what I'm saying? So when he got that look in his eye, I was like, oh dear. Like immediately, danger. And Scar is the one who makes the first move. And we see from the outside that car absolutely fucking explode. Thank you, Yoki, says Erica. Yeah, see, this is why I say Yoshi, because it's so close. This car explodes. We see him. He says, I don't want to be anywhere near these monsters when they're fighting. I think it's about time for me to get off this train. And he goes to the like end of the actual car, looks out onto the howling wilderness, and then just goes, I can't. And I am not mad at that. Yo, like, I would probably just wait it out, hide somewhere out of the way, and just hope for the best. Because what are you going to do once you jump off this train? Come on, man. You're out in the middle of fucking nowhere. You were already freezing, and you were, like, sheltered a little at least. You're not going to make it if you get off this train. You're definitely not. So you may as well, like, hope for the best and stay on the train where you might make it. The only thing that you could do otherwise is, like, move to a train as far away, or move to a car as far away from them on the train as possible. But anyway, I really felt for him in that moment. Again, we have a moment of fucking Kimblee holding his goddamned fedora onto his head. And Scar is saying, so, you're Solf J. Kimblee, known as the Crimson Alchemist. Do you remember my face? Oh, I remember you very well indeed. You were in the Khanda district of Ishval, isn't that right? And those people with you, they were members of your family, yes? I remember another fellow who looked just like you, except he had glasses. Of course, it's hard to see a family resemblance when everyone is losing tons of blood and screaming in agony. Sir, I am going to need you to put your boner away for a second and fight this man. You have got to calm that shit down. Get it under control. This is not the time. For Christ's sake. Oh my God. He is just about to like jerk off in front of this man about killing his brother. Calm down, Kimblee. Okay? There is a time and place. Especially considering the fact, like, it's one thing to taunt somebody when you can absolutely put them down and you're just fucking with them. But Kimblee winds up getting his ass whooped here. So it's extra, like, maybe you had a better place you could have put that energy. That's all I'm saying. Between that and holding on your fucking fedora, you gotta have your eye on the prize a little bit more, my guy, because your priorities are all over the place. And you seemed like you were focused when we were in our little cozy boardroom with a cup of coffee talking about what's pinned to the wall over there. But then we get you in the field, and you're just too fucking turned on by everything to keep your head on straight. You just have some professionalism. Christ. So anyway, then begins the fight between him and Scar for real. And I just can't. Yoki at one point gets like blown all over the place. It almost looks like he gets like blown off the train. I can't quite tell. And this is when Kimblee starts to realize, oh, this guy might actually be better than me because I've been out of practice for a minute. And it's no accident that as he realizes this, his fedora goes flying off and is lost to the wind. So I really think that the fedora is a metaphor for his overall like sense of confidence and mental state. It's his crown. And I'm just going to kind of like from now on keep an eye on his fedora if he continues to wear one. I am assuming if I were a guy who worked with Kimblee and I found out Kimblee had lost his fedora, I am going out that instant to find another one because I would just feel like this guy is going to ask me to get him a new one anyway, and it would be a major priority for him. And I don't want to fucking deal with his like tantrum over losing it to begin with. So I may as well go get him one and just to save us all the trouble. Hopefully everybody knows his hat size. That's like, I bet in his file, his all of his measurements for his custom suits and shit. So yeah, all this man knows how to do is destroy. And as he is thinking that, here comes a spear of some kind. I don't even think I saw what it was that Scar like broke off to throw at him. I'm trying to see. It just looks like a length of pipe. I can't even tell. So yeah, he throws it at Kimblee. It like fucking impales him through the stomach and pins him to the car door, like the train car door. And then Scar comes right up to him and says, "It's good to know you remember my brother. I'll deal with you just as you dealt with him." And Kimblee says it's quite a shame that twice now I've failed to kill the same Ishvalan mongrel when I've had him in my sights. And then he claps his hands together to transmute, and he severs the link between the two train cars. And instantly, Scar is left behind. And Kimblee says, "It's terribly humiliating to have to leave when we were just getting things started here. But don't worry, we'll settle this next time, Ishvalan." If I were Scar, I would be so mad. Do you hear me? Oh my God. look, it is one thing to just get soundly beaten by your enemy. It is another thing to be about to win and your enemy just fucking finds a way to duck and run. That is just infuriating. I would be livid. This is like when you're about to beat somebody in a board game and they just flip the fucking board over, you know? And it's like, you know that you should take some satisfaction in the fact that they were so aware they were about to get spanked that they just decided to fucking throw it all. But you can't, because you just wanted the satisfaction of actually whooping them, you know? Yeah, Erica has brought up in the chat, the word mongrel feels so gross, and I know it's supposed to, but it's so effective in kind of a sickening way. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely got eugenics vibes. Strong eugenics vibes. That's Kimblee's brand. I saw somebody was telling me about a person that they know on some Discord server who is obsessed with Kimblee, like weirdly infatuated, has like a shrine with a bunch of merch of him in their house. And they have claimed that Kimblee is like coded as Jewish, and that if you like criticize him, they come at you by saying that he's like, that criticism is somehow anti-Semitic. And it's a wild thing to accuse anyone of when Kimblee is such a Nazi. Like, I don't even know where, it just feels like you have purposely constructed a reverse reality so that you can get mad over nothing. Is how, there's plenty of real shit to get mad at people for. You don't need to make things up, y'all. It's fine. But yeah, Kimblee is a Nazi. Like, it seems like he really believes that anybody who can do alchemy is like a god, essentially. And I mean, I will say that when Owen and I were covering like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Korra, we did think about what it would be like to be somebody without powers in a place where people have them. Some people have them. It's not like super, super common, but it's enough of the population that they would certainly be able to oppress you if they felt like it, and how threatening that would feel. And that was the only thing that sort of like bumped me out with Korra, where it really felt like they were starting to like address that at the start of the first season, and then they never really cope with the reality of having a significant portion of the population be able to like use magic and, yes, intimidate people, do crimes with it. You know, we often just would get to see benders who were either straight up evil but like tended to work for the military, so it was always like a government thing, or it would be people who were like just using it to, you know, do their job, support their family. And there was very little seen of people who were just like, you know, bullies and dickheads a lot of the time and getting that addressed in a real way. It was always like, oh, well, they're the bad guy and we'll beat them this episode. But like, that's going to be an ongoing problem in a society where some people are granted magic powers and others aren't. So what I'm saying is Kimblee's attitude doesn't feel like unrealistic to the way people would think if this were a reality. If you were born with the ability to like control elements and shit, and most other people couldn't do it, try and tell me that you wouldn't start to kind of feel yourself a little too much. Not to say that you would necessarily wind up being a Nazi, but it would certainly be something that you would have to like keep an eye on, lest you get above yourself in a way that could be potentially dangerous for other people, because it's not just about your attitude, it's about what you can do. So I'm just saying, Kimblee is like, there are people without fucking real powers out there that act like Kimblee, you know? Just add the powers in there, and that's a cocktail I don't want to be dealing with. And at one point we have one of the guys who's driving the train, and he like says, "What's that?" And he looks behind them, and he's like, "Oh my God, all the rear cars are gone." And one of the guys up front with him is like, "We can't stop. They told us not to stop for anything." And he's like, "We lost a bunch of the cars. If we don't stop, we're going to get in trouble for losing them." And then when they like get to the back to see what the hell happened and they find Kimblee fucking impaled, Kimblee just yells at them and it's like, I didn't tell you to stop. And I was like, oh my God, Kimblee. Dude. But, you know, I understand though, because he is in a bad way that probably cannot be handled on the train. So it is imperative to him for them to get him someplace quickly because he needs a hospital. He needs something. Have we seen anybody who can do alchemy on flesh? That's like, I know that, you know, making a whole human body isn't a thing, but is there any way to like knit flesh together in healing way? I don't recall if that's explicitly impossible or if it is just like kind of in the same family as the human transmutation altogether, where it's just like, oh, we just don't do that, you know? But there's a moment where he like lifts his hand and looks at it as they're like, you know, cowering away from him, going to start the train back up again. And he has the like transmutation circle on his hand and there's a big smear of blood on it. And he says, ah, yes, death is closing in. One who spreads death and destruction must accept their pursuit. He's got this look on his face, you guys. He will never be far from either. But what could be more beautiful than doing work that puts your soul at risk? Because that's what it means to be alive, at least on this battlefield. So this is a Wendy's. All right, so then we cut to Mei Chang and Marcoh. And they are trudging through the snow by themselves. And it's very clear that this is all a distraction so that we can make sure that they get where they're heading safely. Marcoh, like, the thing that happened to his face, we don't actually get to see what happens here. And I have to say, Marcoh says about Yoki and Scar, I hope they're safe. And I have to just stop for a second and give this man some props. Marcoh is still like rooting for Scar in a way. And I just really appreciate that Scar ripped his fucking face up. And he is still like, no, yeah, I deserved that. Like, he's not bitter. It doesn't feel like there's anything, you know? And at one point she says something about how, like, I wish that I could help you with that. Because it's clearly, oh no, we do see it. My bad. His face is like, it almost just looks like he's aged really badly. And there's one eye that's like mostly closed. But yeah, this, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this would be like alchemy on the flesh. It's just not really like, it's not done with any intent. It was just to like fuck his face up in general, and it wasn't done to heal. So I don't know if this even counts. I don't know. But yeah, he says it's just still healing. It stings to have the wind blowing against it. That's all. And she says, I wish I could have healed your face completely so it wouldn't hurt so much. But that's when he says, this is the face a man like me deserves to wear. I am content with it. Again, I just, you know, he wanted the easy way out initially, telling Scar to just kill him. And I really was pretty salty with him about that, because you don't get to fucking choose what you get, sir. And being killed would be very easy. But I feel like he's really adapted well, and it's just like, all right, so I'm not going to die. This is still punishment. I still kind of wanted this, so I accept this, you know? So this is when we reach the Briggs mountain range. These peaks mark our border with Drachma, the large country to the north. Judging by those, we should be getting close to the place Scar showed us. And she pulls this map out that doesn't really make any sense to me as like a viewer. I don't think it's meant to. And she says it is right over there. So they like change course a little bit. And we see like a stretched ahead of them. It is miles before they get where they are going. So, okay. We have a little moment here in Rush Valley. You guys, I don't know what to think of Atelier Garfield. But Winry is trying to call to talk to Ed, and they tell her that he is gone, that he headed north. And Gabrielle is like, so what's going on? Is everything okay, sweetheart? And Garfield, sorry. She says they apparently are heading north, and Garfield says, oh dear, you know what that means. They're going to die. Garfield, what the fuck? Who does that? Why would you say that? Has Winry not been a good employee to you? Has she not given you her all? Did she not cause such a ruckus when she left? Because people love her work so much that it's very clear your business has gone through the roof? How can you just, oh, well, they're going to die. I wish she slapped him. He looks so fucking happy with himself, too. As he says it, he's got this, like, smug little smirk on his face. Like, he's just telling her, oh, they're probably going to lose big at the blackjack table. Like, what kind of fucking vibe is that to have? Why would you do this? I am mad at him. I'm just saying. Ooh, there's a bunch of stuff in the chat I missed. Sorry. Erica says there have been mentions of medical alchemy and alchemy, but I don't know if that's things like helping with a headache or for things like surgery. Oh, that's true, because they do say how, like, yeah, I thought it was like, well, we use it to like make medicines and stuff, but that's like, of course that's not what that means. It's kind of vague, and we've only seen that Dr. Marcoh used his incomplete stone to heal people, but not what he was healing them from. May can use healing alchemy. Oh, that's right, because May actually just says straight up, I could have healed your face more. I completely forgot. Wow. It's like literally the next scene, and she says it, and I read it out loud, and I didn't even put it together. Y'all, I am not on my top form lately. I'm sorry. My poor brain. Feels like it's been scrambled. Somebody just popped the top of my skull open and just went in there with a little fucking whisk. Okay. Yes, but thank you guys, because I just didn't even think of it. So we go then to Ed and Al. They're on the back of a wagon being like brought way out into the wilderness. It's very clear that like where they're getting dropped off, it's the fucking middle of nowhere. They're lucky to have gotten a ride here. And this guy says, if you follow this road, it'll take you straight to Fort Briggs. And then he says to Al, you in the armor, is that automail? And Al says no. And he says, oh, okay, well then you should be all right. And he just goes off. And Ed says, what was that all about? And I'm like, why don't you fucking ask that man, Ed? Instead of asking your brother, who would never know the answer, and you have to know that. That drives me bonkers. Clearly, there is going to be an issue with having automail, and you aren't even concerned or putting two and two together when it's extremely obvious. I hate it. That made me really, really annoyed. And I know that it has to happen in this way for them to like continue forward, but we could just not have this guy like mention anything. I don't know. It just felt like one of those things where sometimes our characters are going to put two and two together in a way that almost feels like a complete leap, where I'm like, there's really no reason to think 1 and 1 equals 2 here. I'm going with it, but I don't know how you even came to that conclusion. And then there's shit like this, where it's extremely fucking obvious that there's something that you should be putting together. And you're just kind of like, oh, that's weird. And then just continue fucking on your way. I don't like it. I am just going to say that. So they continue on their journey and stay on the road if you want to live. So, as we see, this is a lot more true than either of them seem to really think as they're looking out here. And as they are trudging, Ed is experiencing the cold. Al, unmoved. I really kind of expected, to be honest, I know that Ed is flesh and blood. And so, of course, the cold will affect him like in a more immediate way. But I kind of thought Al might begin to seize up, simply a physical reaction to the cold. You know, that it might make it difficult for him to continue moving because he is metal. You know, I don't really know like what difference it makes for his soul to be bound to the metal, if that sort of changes the reaction the metal has to his environment. Because like Ed went to the desert without Al, right? So he experienced like the heat of the automail, but that was also like the heat of it up against his actual skin and whatnot. So maybe it's like, we never saw Al in the desert to see how heat would affect his armor. I don't know if it would, you know, if that's like just something that's sort of accounted for in the way that his armor works. But I just kept thinking it would become a thing, and it just doesn't seem to be. And at this point, they can't really even see the road because the weather has changed, and it is like horizontal driving snow, which that is a very different vibe. There is nothing like when either snow or rain is coming at you horizontally. Miserable. It feels like somebody is just fucking with you, giving you the finger. So they talk about their teacher and how she was like left out here for a month and that she lived through it. So they should be able to like take this walk, you know. And then they talk about her killing a bear. The bears around here are 15 feet tall. There's no way she could have killed one of them. And then all of a sudden, this man drops down behind them, and they both think for a second that it's a bear, but it's definitely not. And this dude is sporting a type of automail that I'm not even quite sure what to call this. It looks like a combination of like a chainsaw and one of those claws that you use to crack open lobster shells. If you get what I'm saying, I really wasn't totally sure what to make of that sort of clasp cover part. But he tosses Al to the side and covers him with like this heavy net. So Al is pretty well like tripped up for the moment. And then Ed says, "Is that a military uniform you're wearing?" And this dude just replies, insulting his automail. "It looks pretty mediocre, but it's interesting that you have some. But I guess you don't know a good weapon when you see him. This right here is combat automail model M1913A: the Crocodile. Now shut up, you miserable Drachman spy, or I'll show you exactly what this baby can do." And it is pretty amusing to see Ed facing off against this dude, and the little baby, like, blade coming off of his automail. I'm not trying to, like, be mean or anything, Ed, but it does look a tiny bit pitiful. It's like somebody has a butcher knife and you've got like one of those little butter spreader knives, you know, the kinds of those offset handle and like the curved like indent. That's like what he's got. I'm sorry, Ed. So Ed's in the midst of like trying to deny that they're spies, and I love there is this moment where he gets whacked by this dude, and he's like, "Wait, that hurt. something's wrong with my automail. What's going on? And the guy pinchers Ed and like on his automail, grabs him and says, listen, he's like trying to say, listen to me for a second. This dude says, your resistance is futile. And he zaps him with this like electrical current. I don't know if it's meant to be actual alchemy that he's doing here or if it's just electricity. But he says, your pathetic automail is easy to destroy. And Ed says, no, you've got it wrong. And then is like, I'll destroy you. And he taps this guy's, and he's clearly going to try and use his transmutation on it. And nothing happens. And the guy says, was that supposed to hurt? Which is honestly so embarrassing. Truly. So behind him, finally, Al stands up and tosses Ed his head of his armor. And Ed jams the head into this guy's like little apparatus and comes down. And this guy says, well, that wasn't too bad, even with that ordinary automail you have, but it's over now. And then they look up and they are like surrounded by people in those snow uniforms, like in Star Wars that Princess Leia is wearing, that all white getup with like the goggles and whatnot. It's a pretty dope moment, honestly. That kind of look is, I think, kind of chic. I'm into it. And all of a sudden, we get this voice, Buccaneer. Who are they? And it's General Armstrong, who is a babe. She has got these full pouty lips and this mane of golden hair that's really layered, like chef's kiss perfectly. And these piercing blue eyes that really give the impression she is done with everybody's shit and will be until she's dead. And she's got her sword in front of her and she's resting her hands on it like she's posing for a fucking statue. Like, and looking down on them with this like fur collar cloak draped around her. And they try and tell her that Major Armstrong sent us. Her name is Olivia Mia Armstrong, Major Armstrong's older sister. And I think it's Al that says, they look really different. And what you mean is, she's super, super hot, Al. It's fine. You could just say that she's super, super hot. Everybody knows it. It's very, very noticeable. And she's yelling down, who are you? And Ed is like, I'm Edward Elric, Fullmetal Alchemist. I don't know if you've heard of me. And I was given a letter of introduction. So can you call off your guard dogs? Because we were sent to see you. And they get searched. And she sees the letter. And she sees that it is indeed her brother's handwriting. And is like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely him. And then she just tears it into a bunch of pieces. And Ed is horrified. I love that it says, my sister, on the front. And he's got a little, like, stamp or sticker of, like, a rose. It is so adorable. And, yeah, it just absolutely does not matter to her. The way that she says it, because she looks at the seal on the back. It's from Alex, all right. But she says, I don't trust anybody else's opinions about a person. It doesn't mean anything to me. I decide what somebody is like by judging them with my own eyes. And she just tosses those pieces of paper into the wind. And Ed and Al are startled by this response. But honestly, Armstrong low-key warned them. He wrote the letter and he even said, I don't know if this is going to do anything, but I'm giving it to you for just the sake of like doing what I can. But I know it's probably not going to have an impression. And he was right. So finally, she tells him to come inside, and Ed is too busy staring at this massive fucking wall. What is it with stories that have a giant wall in the north? Because this is like the third one I have covered that has this. I'm trying to remember what the other one was, because it was obviously Song of Ice and Fire, but there was another one, and it was the same like idea. And I was just like, why is this such a popular concept? But yeah. So he's like gawking at it and it's just like, what is this place? La, la, la. And she interrupts and is like, would you fucking come in and close your gaping mouth? Because we don't have time for this. So come in here before I tear your little body apart, limb from limb. And as she turns and says this, there's like a twitch in her face. And then the animation is a grizzly bear from behind her. And when we go to Ed and Al, we see Ed, but Al is just a bunny, like a scared bunny who's crying. That really got me, guys. I really cracked up at that. The screaming, scared bunny for Al honestly just feels, Al is kind of like a bunny to me. Like, anyway, it just felt really, really, really appropriate. So yeah, be warned, I won't coddle you because you're children. This is the mountain fortress. Briggs, here only the strong survive. And Ed and Al basically like bite their lips and they're like, "Mm," and that is the end of the episode. So you know what? I didn't even check, but is there an after credits thing here? I'm just realizing that I didn't check on that with the email that Max gives me to warn me. I don't know how. It's sort of interesting because like I don't know how often this happens, but the last one where there was an after credit scene, it was the body of Dr. Marcoh allegedly that had been like left in the cell. But then the next episode right after starts with the after credits scene. So it didn't actually feel like it was that crucial to watch it because it wound up being part of the next episode. But I can understand why it felt better to have the previous episode end that way than to just let me suddenly find it in the first part of the next episode. So anyway, okay. So Erica says a short one, but yes. Okay. I'm going to after credits and to see, I stopped in like the exact right place for it to begin. See, here we get the nice glowing warm lighting to indicate a place is cozy, even though there's snow. Okay. So Mei has the map and her and Marcoh are digging. She says, there it is. And she pulls out a journal, a notebook from a hole in the ground. He studied different ways of combining Xing-Shi's alchemy with Amestrian alchemy. And do you think that could be the secret to immortality? And Marcoh says, I'm not sure, but maybe so. Maybe the information in this book could bring us hope, or its pages may contain nothing but despair. Well, there's only one way to find out. And then we cut. Oh, and then the narrator begins. Okay, so I'm done. I will stop. Narrator. All right, so they find the notebook. I didn't think that would be so easy. I kind of thought the notebook was going to wind up somewhere that they would have to like really sneak into. And I didn't really think about the fact that like, in order for it to be in, say, like a safe deposit box, Scar would have had to open a safe deposit box. And I don't know what kind of ID he has for that. So I guess I should have realized that probably wasn't going to be within his ability and that he'd have to just find some place out of the way to keep it. And I think it's kind of interesting that Scar trusts them enough to send them to find it. You know, because like this is a really valuable, not only tool in terms of alchemy, but this is something that like his brother wrote, so it has to mean a lot to him. And he isn't even with them when they go and track it down. That's a lot of trust he's putting in them. I'm surprised. But it's nice that he's making some friends. All right, guys, I am going to wrap up, but thank you all again very much for hanging out with me. And thank you again to Max for commissioning it. Hope you guys are all having fun with the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.